turned the world upside down. And throughout the years, numerous religious wars were waged as people fought to impose their interpretation of these sacred texts on the people that they conquered. As Europeans imposed Christianity throughout Europe, throughout Asia, they fought a variety of wars. There were 8 crusades, religious wars between Christians and Muslims, which took place between 1096 and 1291. The war against terrorism that George Bush talked about in his State of the Union address in January, he referred to the axis of evil, and this war could be considered as the 9th crusade. As a matter of fact, in his speech, he used this language, crusade. And there were a host of people who criticized him because it conjured up images of these 8 other crusades, wars between Christians and Muslims. So what we're dealing with now in this war of terrorism is nothing but a continuation of a war that has been going on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, which has cost millions and millions of lives. All because of 2 groups of people battling each other for their concepts of God. It's important to realize that inquisitions were organized by the Roman Catholic Church to silence those who resisted their doctrines. They began with Constantine in 306 and lasted until the late 1500s. Christians who protested the dogma of the Roman Catholic Church and broke away called themselves Protestants or Protestants. They are comprised of Anglicans, Baptists, Lutherans, Mormons, and others. Those who broke away from the Roman Catholic Church. Let me just kind of go through a couple of things I want to share with you in terms of one of the significant changes took place in 1534 when King Henry VIII separated from the Vatican and decided that he was going to establish the Church of England. Felt that it was no longer necessary for him to receive orders from someone living hundreds and hundreds of miles away, that he was king of his domain. He was going to be responsible for the religious and spiritual directions of his people. And so he created a new church and a new religious ideology. And in this new religious ideology, he said that no women, no females, unless they were members of the noble class, were allowed to read their sacred book, their holy Bible. No apprentices, no journeymen, no laborers were permitted to read the Bible under penalty of death. So let's understand something about this book, the book that many of us grew up reading, the King James Version of the Bible, and understand something about what went into this book, what has come into our minds and our consciousnesses, and how it has affected our behavior. In 1604, King James authorized a committee of 50 scholars to write a uniform translation of the Bible. And by royal authority, all people, all citizens of England were bound to read his official version of the Holy Book only. You could be killed if you read another version of the Bible. And as a minister, a friend of mine said that this King James Version of the Bible is probably one of the most inaccurate versions ever written. But let me just share some information with you. I've gotten the 5-minute warning. So let me kind of bring some things to a close by sharing with you some information that I had originally published in the Browder file in the essay entitled Exploding the Myths, the piece on religion. It was one of the longest pieces, and it attracted the most interest or the most comments because of my discussion on religion, the African origins of the Bible, and how the Bible has been modified by others throughout the centuries. And specifically, what interested a number of people were the references that I made with regards to Shakespeare and the role that he played in writing this King James authorized version of the Bible. What's significant is that King James was 46 years old when this project of King James Version of the Bible was completed in 1610. And during that time, many artisans, painters, writers, sculptors were commissioned to do sacred work. But but they were not allowed to put their signatures on them. And so many artists found very creative ways to write their name. They put it upside down, or they put it backwards, or they put it in the corner of a painting. Shakespeare found an equally creative way of inserting his name into the text. For example, if you look in Psalms 46, the third verse, the 46th word from the beginning of Psalms 46 is the word shake. The 46th word at the end of Psalms 46 and Psalms 46 verse 9 is the word spear. That is Shakespeare's signature in the Bible. Now, when I first referenced that in the book in '89, I received a lot of inquiries about people wanted to have some more information about that. So when I revised this book, I incorporated in the revision additional information, supplemental information about Shakespeare and his role in the Bible. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I did was I got maybe about a dozen different versions of the Bible. And I looked at Psalms 46 verse 3, Psalms 46 verse 9. And the King James Version of the Bible is the only version of the Bible where you will find the word shake, 46th word from the beginning of Psalms 46, and spear, the 46th word from the end of Psalms 46. So it's the only Bible where you find the strategic placement of these two words together that codify Shakespeare's involvement with this text. It's also important to realize that certain language in the Bible, thee, thou, ye, shall, this is Old English terminology. They didn't speak like that 2,000 years ago. But that is a language in the text. It's what I refer to as biblical sampling, where folk they borrow sacred text and incorporate it into their own. And let me just share just one more piece here about Shakespeare before I bring things to a close. With regards to Shakespeare, a little additional information about Shakespeare, who lived from 1546 to 1616, is still considered the greatest dramatist the world has ever known, the finest poet who has ever written in the English language. The World Book Encyclopedia said that Shakespeare originated such familiar phrases as fair play, foregone conclusion, catch cold, disgraceful conduct. He also invented such common words as assassination, bump, eventful, and lonely. Right? He was a writer of history. Shakespeare was primarily a writer of history. And he had a way of writing with such compassion that he was able to interest the common man in these stories. It's important to realize the impact that he has had on people throughout the ages, particularly in some of his other historical works. Much of what we know about Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, and Mark Antony was made up by William Shakespeare. Mark Antony never said, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear. The whole story about the death and the suicide of Cleopatra and Mark Antony was made up by Shakespeare. So what I'm trying to get you all to understand is the extent to which information can be incorporated into text, and we accept it automatically without analyzing what this information is, who wrote it, and the impact that it had on us. So, it's time to bring this to a close, unfortunately. And let me just leave you with this. The information that I share with you today, I hope will enable you to cultivate a meaningful relationship with the Creator. I hope you will begin to question everything. Seek answers to those who are responsible for giving you spiritual direction, and can look to Africa as the source of all spirituality. Study the ancient Kemetic texts. Read them, because we're at a point in time where the Bible is going to be replaced. Within the next 25 years, the Bible is going to be replaced. We have available to us sacred texts that can direct us and guide us. Sacred texts that were written by our ancestors that we have to begin to interpret, to translate for ourselves, and make our own sacred and holy Bibles. And I believe that when we do that, when, as the brother was saying, I'm closing now, as the brother was saying, you can expect, based on where this country is going right now, major economic, political, and and social upheaval within the next 25 years. You can expect that, right? And as that is coming, you're also witnessing the deconstruction of religious systems. Catholic Church is literally disintegrating before your very eyes. And so we're going to need something to hold on to in times of trouble that are coming. Turn to your ancestral writings. I believe that you will find in those texts the knowledge that will help you move through the coming period of chaos and will give you a greater sense of stability and spiritual direction. Thank you all very much. Okay. All right.
Brothers and sisters, let us all stand and hold hands. Please, we're going to leave together. Let everybody stand. We're leaving right now. But before we go, let's give Brother Browder another hand. Two things. Brother Browder has some books in the back. He's on his way in the back now, and he'll be able to sign, autograph those books. So I just want to say to Dr. Ben, all that Tony, and it's just marvelous to see the students who have come along since Dr. Ben over the past 30, 35 years have been taking us to Egypt and pointing these things out on the walls and temples of Egypt. Again, I just want to give thanks to Dr. Ben because I was able to travel to Egypt with him about 8 times. Brother Maddox, before he left, asked me to remind you that we were a little short in the offering. So the sister's going to be at the back, right there, with that bucket. Hold that bucket up in the back. We want you to please pull out a couple of dollars and put them in the bucket on your way out, that we may meet our obligations tonight. We did stay overtime in that course. We're an African people, stolen from our homeland, robbed of our culture, robbed of our language, our names, our history, and our statehood, our peoplehood. But we will rise, never again to be oppressed. Up, you mighty people. Up, you mighty people. You can accomplish what you will. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Good night.
That I had several colleagues who work with me in D.C. who I feel comfortable can stand in for me and deliver the same information that they were interested in. So I recommended 2 people. They selected the sister over the brother, which I knew they would do. And then I prepped the sister for the interview and said, well, when you talk to them, don't be too African. You know, say Egypt instead of Kemet, because they're not gonna air Kemet, right? So you have to know who you're dealing with. And so she she went in, she did the interview, and then they asked her to do it again. They taped it, then they asked her to do it again and leave out, you know, don't say Aset, say ISIS. Don't say Kemet, say Egypt. So she did it again, and she was so frustrated. I said, well, baby, I mean, you got to understand, this is who you're dealing with. And if you want to get your foot in the door, you have to speak their language. You have to speak their language and work through them in order to get access to other people. That's the way the game is now. Hopefully that's not how it's always going to be, but that's how the game is now, right? So until we get our own television stations, and I'm not talking about BET, BET never was ours, even when it was black controlled. So we have to begin to use other technologies, the internet, YouTube. That's free. What we have to begin to do is to produce some quality information. Brother, you mentioned that, Tyrone, you mentioned that you're doing some stuff in the media. We need to get some professional people who understand the media to produce some short clips, because people have a very short attention span. So if you want to create something that's going to appeal to young folk, it should be no more than 10 to 15 minutes. And you hit your major points, not too deep, superficial information, not super